Let me tell you a brief and true story of the famous and ever-true Templar, Rikrhard Bjallafadir. Once within the northern lands of Tamriel, within a manor called the Old Mistvale, there lived a woman named Rikrhard Bjallafadir and her husband Odubjorn. They inherited the manor after the death of Thane Snelgar. The family had over generations been true followers of the eternal light of Meridia. Famous for their teachings, they were revered within the nearby town for their special abilities and deep knowledge of the Daedric prince. When Rikrhard turned 40, she gave birth to their son, Rikrhard, who would prove to be a sign from the gods, as Rikrhard earlier was told by a fortune-teller that she could not get pregnant. As Rikrhard was born, the family grew even more famous within the nearby town, as Rikrhard proved early to have a close and personal connection to Meridia and the teachings of the light. The calling of the light seemed to come naturally to him, from the moment he was born. When he was in the room, you could feel the bright energy surrounding him. Not all citizens of the Rift was impressed by this small miracle. There was also a dark energy emerging from the Ratway, a dark and foul place below the town core. One night, after the celebration of Rikrhard as he turned 18, one could observe an enormous bright blood moon on the otherwise pitch-black night sky. The family, alongside their closest friends, gathered from all across the world, had just thrown a big celebration for him, within Old Mistvale Manor. The day after, Rikrhard, with his mother and father, was about to travel to Rikrhard Temple in Skyrim, where Rikrhard was to be officially dubbed as a Templar Knight in the name of Meridia. After the celebration though, on the night of the blood moon, Rikrhard had a hard time settling down. There seemed to be something that worried her. She somehow felt like something, or someone, was observing her and Odubjorn in their house. As Rikrhard was just about to head back to bed after reading a book by the fire, she and Odubjorn was ambushed by vampires who had been lurking around all night, observing her every movement. They had probably emerged from the Ratway, within the nearby town. With blessed swords and blazing spears, Rikrhard and Odubjorn stood side by side as they defended each other. They both fought for their very lives as the stream of vampires seemed without an end. Struck by overwhelming numbers of vampires armed with sharp fangs and sharp claws, they both were eventually overpowered and met their final hours together that night, alongside a large amount of vampires. Vampires, on a mission to wipe out the entire family of Bjallafadir. Luckily for Rikrhard on this particular night, he had continued his celebrations with friends within the town and stayed over at the Withered Tree Inn. On the morning after, when he arrived at the Old Mistvale Manor to pack before the journey ahead, he soon witnessed a large number of slayed vampires all over the manor. As he approached the master bedroom, fearing for the lives of his parents, he could see that both walls and floor were tainted with vast amounts of blood. Here, he also found his beloved parents, dead, in a large pile of corpses on the floor, beside their bed. Devastated, Rikrhard ran towards his mother, holding her blood-soaked pale head within his hands, screaming with grief and fury. Now, a blood-hungry and borderless rage grew within him. This was clearly a targeted strike towards the family, made by the lord of these foul creatures. Rikrhard summoned all his friends that day, and as the following night came, they sneaked inside the Ratway and slashed their way through all present vampires. They also struck down hard on their present lord and creator. It was a bloodbath scaled like something never ever experienced by Rikrhard before. After that night, he swore that he would serve Meridia with his daggers and swords in battle, slaying as many undead across the world of Nirn that he possibly could. Especially vampires. This was to become his true cause, as a sharp weapon and powerful tool of Meridia. Eventually, a week after the slaying of vampires within the Ratway, Rikrhard finally made the journey to Rikrhard Temple, alone. The priests within the temple welcomed him with open arms, and he left the temple dubbed as a Templar Knight, blessed by the very own words of Meridia herself. He now felt truly enlightened and found some sort of peace knowing that he was to become a true bringer of light. Nirn was now to become a brighter world to live in through his actions. Once back in Old Mistvale, he could no longer live with the recent memories stalking him, while he was walking around the inner yard of his own home. He needed to settle down somewhere else entirely. He decided to travel south, to close but distant friends, within Valenwood and Auridon. This was to become the adventure of his life, and one who reformed him and the family name in the history books forever. The adventure took Rikrhard across the demanding rocky mountains of Stonefalls, the large plains and challenging wet swamps of Deshan, Shadowfen, and Blackwood. He stayed at local inns along the road when he could afford it, and also spent many nights in abandoned ruins, protected by Meridia, under the naked skies. Once he reached the borders of northern Elswey, he caught a ride on a horse-wagon towards the region of Grathwood. Here, finally, it felt more at home, in a way. Elves, especially wood elves, had been among the family's closest friends earlier, and Rikrhard now felt more at home among them. Most of them welcomed him with open arms once he assisted them with defeating vital and contributing parts of the Blacksap rebellion around Cormount. During his time among friends within Grathwood, he also came to learn more about the Huntsman, Lord of the Hunt. As he learned the way of the hunt, he was offered to also master the arts of lycanthropy. As time went, with the help of close friends, he learned to control the fury-filled rage that came with transforming. The northern brother-in-arms, Rikrhard, who is a Templar knight, can now also appear in the shape of a powerful werewolf. Contradictory, some might say. Faith, if one asks Rikrhard himself. He later also joined arms with the armies of the Dominion. They adventured across Tamriel for many years to come, cleaning the world from foul and dark beings, in many forms. He made himself a well-known fighter to Queen Erin, the leader of the Dominion. Many years have now passed, and countless stories of slaying the undead are now documented within the libraries of Elden Root, the capital for the Dominion. Many years have passed since the vampires slaughtered his parents in Old Mistvale. Now, in present time, Rikrhard has turned 40. He have now reached the same age as his mother Ernafrodi, when she gave birth to him inside the bedroom in Old Mistvale. Rikrhard now reside in the Seabloom Villa, partly isolated on the Isle of Auridon. He bought the villa from an old elf named Elnaril, who is also considered among his best friends. When Rikrhard is not out in the world on various quests, he spends his time here, reflecting on the past and the next steps ahead for him, in the mission to exterminate all things undead. This is the place where he finally found his peace, alongside Meridia, alongside the Lord of the Hunt and among the greatest of friends. The old Mistvale Manor, though, still belongs to the family name, and stands proud in the Rift. Rikrhard occasionally visits the manor, when he ventures north. A place of history and a place of memories. A place of past violence, that formed him, as the man he represents today. He is a true Templar who basks in the light of Meridia, and within the hearts of friends. He is a powerful werewolf who carries a name which strikes fear within most dark places of Tamriel. A character to be remembered, as a defender and a friend, of all things living.